Hello, hello. Happy Thursday. How are you? So, if you are joining us today, I want you to leave a message in the comment section and let us know where you're from and that you're joining us. Also, if you are watching the replay of this broadcast, please leave the word replay in the comment section. So after I do this broadcast, I will leave it on YouTube so that people can watch it there as well. So I want to thank you for joining us. It has been a wonderful week. So on Sunday, we started with this live extension of the Cleverlychanging podcast. And we are already at Thursday. The week is going by very quickly, but I am still here to help guide you along the way as you decide whether or not you're going to homeschool. I know for me, I have been homeschooling my daughters. I have twin daughters who are now 11 and they have been homeschooled all of their lives. So we've had 6 official years of homeschooling. Hi, thank you so much for joining. So I want to say, if you're watching this broadcast and you know some people who are interested in homeschooling, definitely share the broadcast with them, share it on your page so that other people can get this information. Today, I am actually talking about 3 different topics. I'm talking about how to homeschool in the USA because in each state is actually different. My expertise and the one that I'm most familiar with is the state that I live in, and I live in Maryland. So that is really what I can focus on. But if you're in another state, I can definitely tell you where to go to get that information. We're also going to talk about support groups. So there are support groups that exist for homeschooling so that you don't have to feel like you are doing it alone. And right now, with the state of the country and the state of the world, there are people everywhere who have made the decision to homeschool. So more likely than not, you definitely know that you're not alone. And so there is strength in numbers, and we are here to help uplift and support one another as we make the decision to educate our kids. The next thing that I'm going to talk about today is how long your homeschool day should be. And I know for many people that can be kind of tricky. And so we're going to talk about the different age groups and what that's going to look like and how to break that time up so that you're having a good time, they're having a good time, and you're not overwhelmed or stressed. All right. So I'm just going to take a quick minute to introduce myself for those of you who don't know who I am Elko from the blog cleverlychanging.com. I started my blog about 10 years ago to document my journey as a parent. I have twin girls. One of my daughters has both sickle cell anemia as well as type 1 diabetes. And that's really the reason why we started to homeschool. When my daughter was little and we went to the pediatrician, she told me very frankly, she said, I think it is best that you homeschool your children. And I had never even thought about homeschooling, but like most parents, I wanted to do what was best for my child. And so that's really how my homeschool journey began. I wanted to keep my daughter healthy and safe. And I think that's the same situation that a lot of people are in right now. They are homeschooling because they want to keep their children healthy and safe. And so having that perspective and going into it with the desire to keep my child safe really helps frame the perspective. I'm not just doing it because it's convenient. I'm doing it for the better good of my household, for the better good of our health, for the better good of my family. And that is really something that has helped me have a positive attitude throughout the entire experience. And so I'm happy to say that we're still homeschooling. Now, initially, I thought when my children hit middle school years, this would be the year that they would go into a traditional school. But with the pandemic going on, I clearly know that is not the best decision for us right now. And so we have decided to continue to homeschool. It is something that I believe families should decide together. You want both parents to be on board, and you want to have a decision about it to make sure that it is what's best for your family. And so, with a lot of schools being closed, there is an option to do remote learning and distance learning or remote schooling. But there's also an option to homeschool, and they are different. So, the process to get started, which is what we're going to talk about today, is different when you decide to actually homeschool. Now, homeschooling has a variety of philosophies. It's not just one size fits all or one model for everyone. Not long ago, I actually shared a post earlier this week about the different philosophies of homeschooling. And the philosophy that I tend to do myself is an eclectic philosophy. That means I put different philosophies together to decide what works best for my kids. And so I want to share with you what those philosophies are as we get started, because I think it is important to understand the basics of homeschooling, and that every model isn't necessarily going to be perfect for everybody. So, one of the philosophies is the Charlotte Mason philosophy. And we definitely have a podcast that talks a little bit more about what these philosophies are. If you are interested in my podcast, it's the Cleverlychanging podcast, and it is on most of the podcast platforms. So we are on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and numerous others, iHeartRadio, and so forth. So definitely look up the podcast, listen to the early episodes. So like episode 2, 3, 4, they're really going to tell you how to get started. The more recent episodes are really for parents who are in the thick of things. You may not be a homeschooler, but you may want to supplement your child's education. And so that's really what my podcast talks about. So I wanted to just go over the styles. So Charlotte Mason is one style. There's also unit studies, that's different pieces together. Classical education, that is a philosophy that I am familiar with. When my children first started homeschooling, we did a classical model. We used classical conversations, and we stuck with that for several years. And now that they're in middle school, we've decided to take on a different approach. If you want to ask me specific questions about that, or I can definitely do a separate podcast about our experience and those philosophies. But for the most part, I wanted to just list these philosophies for you so that you guys can research them and decide which one is best for you. There's also distance learning and online learning, which is something that we talked about. That's usually where you, as the parent, aren't necessarily responsible for. If you're doing a public school distance learning model, you are not responsible for your child's education alone. That means your child is going to have assigned teachers that teach your child remotely. So that is a different model in and of itself. You're probably going to still be enrolled in some type of educational system. So there is someone over your child and over that education. So private schools offer a distance learning model. It's not just public schools. There are some free options. In the state of Maryland, though, I know people have heard of K-12. In Maryland, they do not allow you to sign up for free for K-12. And that's unique. We also can't sign up for free for Connections Academy. But in many other states, those options are free. But in Maryland, they are not. So that is something to keep in mind. Perhaps that will change with the information that we have on the pandemic. But for now, as of today, it hasn't changed yet. And I did check with my sources for that. Or lastly, there's the eclectic model. So there's also Waldorf and things like that. So those are different philosophies that you can look up. It's not exclusive to those philosophies. I'm sure many of you have heard other philosophies as well, but these are just some of the popular ones. So if you are thinking of homeschooling, how do you get started? That's what we're going to talk about. Now, I do have a post on my site, and after this conversation is over, I will link to that post in the comment section that goes through each of these steps. So if you see me glancing down, I'm glancing down at my post. When I started homeschooling my children, I actually wrote a post about my experience and what it looked like. And so that is what I am looking at to reference. For me, it has been 6 years ago since I started that process, but I wanted to document my journey on my site. And so that is what I'm using to talk to you guys about today. So the very first thing that you want to do is research your state laws. Why do you have to research your state laws? Is because in every state in the USA is different. So I know in Maryland, we are required to keep a portfolio. What is a portfolio? It's a binder that shows your kids' work throughout the whole entire school year. We meet twice a year with our public school system. They have a homeschool office, and we meet with someone from that office twice a year, once in the fall and once in the spring. I have had interviews with them, so to speak, where we go through my portfolio for my kids. Each child has a separate portfolio, and we talk about how they're learning. And I've actually enjoyed that experience. You don't have to meet with the state. You can sign up under an umbrella and that's a different organization. Sometimes it's through a church, sometimes it's through a school, or a different organization. And you would have your review with them versus with the state. I don't mind doing the state reviews because they are absolutely completely free. And I've never had an issue with the people who are doing the reviews. I actually find that they're encouraging. They are usually people who have, so I'm in Prince George's County. And so in Prince George's County, the people that I have met with have usually, actually everyone that I've met with was a former educator who is now retired or on the, they have their doctorate. They have been educators for many years. They've often given me additional resources for supplemental information. And they've just been very positive people that have helped make my journey an easier one. So I know if you are in some groups or talk to some people, they may have a different experience. But for me and my experience, it has been all positive. So that I encourage people to meet with their state because it's a simple process where as long as you have regular instruction, there's usually not a problem. And so I look forward to the conversations because it's a chance to talk about what my kids are learning. I'm excited about their education. It's something that I enjoy talking about. And so that's really how the conversations go with the people who we meet with. In other states, I recently looked up the state of Washington for a friend. And in the state of Washington, it said that they had to meet with someone once a week. So in every state, it may be a little bit different. So you may have someone who oversees you a little bit differently. So that's why it's very important for you to look at your state laws. In our state, in the state of Maryland, we have to actually put in a letter of consent. And that's letting our state know that we are going to homeschool because our tax dollars for every student is allotted to our local school district. And so in Maryland, if you don't send your kid to that school, that local public school doesn't get state dollars for your child. And so you do, and when I did it, I did have to go to the local school district and I had to have the principal sign the paper. So it was something where, I had to physically actually meet them. And so for me, that was a positive experience because you knew exactly what you wanted to do. And I felt comfortable with my decision. And it was a pretty simple, very quick process. I didn't have to make an appointment. In some places, you may need to do that. But for me and my local school district, I did not have to do that. Now, I will say in the state of Maryland, we have different counties. And so I can only speak about my experience in Prince George's County because that's where I live. So in each county, it has different nuances. But what you need to be more aware of is the state laws. So your county cannot require something that your state doesn't require. So it's important to know that. And it's also important to know that you have to withdraw your kid from the school district, especially if your kid has already been to school. It's important that you fill out a withdrawal form. And it's not something that's complicated, but you do have to do it. So that is the process in Maryland. You also want to look at the age requirements. I have talked about my children. They were actually born in October, so they actually got a late start. I could not enroll them at the age of 4 because even though I felt like they were ready, I couldn't officially enroll them at that age. Some people have enrolled their kids in private school, and because their children were ready, they were allowed to still go at the age of 4. But in homeschooling, you cannot officially enroll your kid until they are 5, or they have to turn 5 by September 30th. So that is based on the state laws here in Maryland. Again, if you are in a different state, you do have to look up what age is the state requirement to enroll in homeschooling. So sometimes you may hear people say, I'm homeschooling my kid, and their kid is 4 or 3, they're in preschool. Well, they're homeschooling. You can start teaching your kids whenever you want to. That's not by law. You are their parent. You can start teaching education as early as you want to start. And I encourage you to start early. Now, to actually sign up and officially homeschool and be on your books as a homeschool, on the state's books as a homeschooler, where you have to meet with the state and so forth, you can't officially start that in Maryland until your child is of the legal age in that particular state, in your particular state. So that's how it works in Maryland. The cutoff date for where your kid has to be 5 by is September 30th. And my kids are born in October. And so they weren't able to start that first year. Now, I will say, if your kid is advanced, once your kid is in kindergarten, and you start officially homeschooling, they don't make you use a kindergarten curriculum because that's the year your kids started. My kids already knew the kindergarten information, so they were fine with me doing first grade curriculum when my kids officially started homeschooling. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So you, as a parent, decide where your kid is, and you want to make sure that you're not, pushing them unnecessarily. But if they are ready to move on, allow them to move on. Your state isn't stopping you from doing that. So what else do you have to know? So step 2 is that you must submit your homeschooling forms. So the first step was that you have to research what you have to do for your state. And the next step is to actually submit the forms. So a lot of times there are some signatures that are required. So make sure you get those and send them in. Don't just keep them at your house and have them on file in case you need them. You do have to send them in. So we have a question. Let me Let me share that from JoJo. It says Montgomery County requires to complete a homeschool instructional form. The form must be submitted 15 days prior to the first day of school. Exactly. So that is the same requirement for most of the counties in the state of Maryland. So you want to make sure that you submit the forms. The names of the forms may change since I have started homeschooling, because every year they have something called COMAR in the state of Maryland. And so COMAR is the official guidelines of how you're supposed to homeschool in the state of Maryland. And so basically, you do have to complete one form per child. Exactly. And so in the state of Maryland, you want to sign those forms and send them in. And you want to follow those COMAR guidelines. So where do you go to find those guidelines? Where do you go to do the research? So the what is it called? The HSLD is a great place to start. And I also know that Time for Learning, the site Time for Learning, also has your homeschool laws. So the HSLDA is one site that will tell you what the requirements are. So that is really my go-to spot for finding out and making sure that I'm in compliance. So for the state of Maryland, if you go to my post that I will leave in the comments section, that information will be there about what is required. So Time for Learning has that information for all the states as well. And it's a great resource. So you can do a search for your state. In Google, you can type in, if you're in the state of Alabama, you would type in requirements for homeschooling in the state of Alabama. And that's how you get started to find out what is required. So next, you want to join a local homeschool group or co-op. Let me be very honest with you. I think that joining a co-op is important, whether it's a physical co-op or a virtual co-op. And I say that because I think it offers a level of accountability. It also gives you a chance to meet people who are just getting started homeschooling. And you want to make sure that you're building up your support system, because homeschooling is not always easy. You see people online posting their great photos with their kids, and learning just seems to be so vivacious and fun. But there are some days where even those parents aren't having a spectacular time, and it's hard. But it's much easier if you have someone that you can depend on and learn from and talk to about it. So that is why I say join a local co-op or a homeschool group. They are different. A homeschool group is kind of less formal, and a co-op really means that you as a parent are agreeing to be involved. And so for my kids, there are some co-ops that are drop-off co-ops. Even now, the co-op that my kids attended last year, they are still deciding what they're going to do. So all co-ops probably what they're going to do under these circumstances probably aren't set in stone yet. Even the school systems are still, like, we're seeing our friends come up with, what their school system is doing. I know in Maryland, in Prince George's County, they just released last week that they're moving to a distance learning model, and they're going to revisit it in January and see if they can open schools. So that is something that we're doing. But I know in some states, they're actually are starting school. I have family that's in Wake County, North Carolina, and they said that the school districts there are some school districts that are going to send their kids to school. So you have to find out what your state and your county is doing. So in our county in Maryland, we are actually moving to a distance learning model. All right, so and private schools are going to be different as well. So where do you find co-ops and homeschool groups? One way is to Google it. And I know that's kind of simple, like, oh, no brainer. But really, that's really how I got started. I Googled it. And I also went into Facebook. So, Facebook, we often don't think of Facebook being a homeschool resource, but it absolutely is. It absolutely is. And what you can do, you can type in like the name of your county or the name of your state and type in the word homeschooler. And you will start to see many homeschool group names come up, at least for many areas. And if you homeschool by a certain philosophy, you can put in maybe Charlotte Mason homeschooling or Waldorf homeschooling. You know, there are subsets. And if you go into those groups and you say, hi, you know, I'm from, and you let people know what area you're in, people in those homeschool groups can tell you if there are smaller co-ops and things where people get together and can share resources. They often do curriculum swaps. So I really encourage you to use Facebook as a resource. Of course, for me, I'm going to be more familiar with my area, and I can share with you some of the homeschool groups that I'm in. So as a Maryland homeschooler, I'm in the Maryland Homeschooler Facebook group. Homeschooling in Carroll County is another Facebook group, and Anne Arundel County Homeschoolers has a group. Greenbelt Homeschoolers have a group. Silver Spring Homeschoolers have a group. Sankofa Homeschool Community has a group. Cornerstone Tutorial has a group. So there are many different types of homeschool groups. There's also, as a Black homeschooler, there are Black homeschool groups. And you know, you want to look for people who may have a similar philosophy. So you want to find those homeschool groups that fit your philosophy, that will give you the encouragement. You want to be around people who are like-minded so that you will feel support, because I promise you, there will be a time when you need extra support. So let's see, there was a comment about the subjects. So yes, most definitely. In Maryland, the required subjects in Maryland are English, language arts, math, science, social studies, art, music, health, and physical education. Yes. And they are flexible with the way you teach art and music. So that's something to keep in mind, as well as health. So physical education is another thing. So those are kind of treated kind of like electives, even though they are required. They're not like, you don't necessarily have to have a book with the curriculum for that particular subject. So you don't necessarily have to have an art book. You could use YouTube videos for art tutorials and go through art that way. So they are very flexible. And I want to share something about the subjects. In the state of Maryland, again, I'm mentioning Maryland a lot because I live in Maryland, so that is what I am most familiar with. Our local libraries have resources for every single one of these subjects. They even offer certain classes, not necessarily formal classes, but they're classes that where someone has taught a class and then they upload it to a database. And our library card gives us access to that database. And so for my kids, we use it for like foreign language. So they have something called Mango languages, and it gives us access to those resources. So I want all of you to research your library and see what is offered. There are some curriculums that I actually don't go out and purchase. I just check them out from the library, because my library has them as a resource. Sometimes it's just a really great place to start. Sometimes they will offer certain classes, especially for the younger ones. If you're looking to get together with people, the library is a great place to get together. They also, I know Howard County, which is a county that's very close to me, they allow people from other counties to get a Howard County card. and they have phenomenal resources. So that is actually my favorite county for the library system. I'm just going to be honest. I love the Howard County Library System because they also have robotics for kids, and they have tech classes, and they just really have phenomenal resources. And so yesterday in our talk, we talked, our guest Io, she mentioned that in Alabama, the one of the librarians also homeschooled, and she would allow homeschoolers to get free books from their special section. So many libraries will have special sections where you can purchase books, or they'll have discount book days and so forth. So utilize your library for different classes. And I want to also say something about Maryland. And Maryland offers a great activity system. I don't know what that activity system is going to look like this year, but in the past, I've been able to use the rec centers at my local community rec center. And my community rec centers in most of Maryland, at least where I live in Prince George's County, they're actually connected with the school. And during school hours, I have been able to get with a group of parents, and we do physical education together and teach physical education classes together. And so we have a full gym. So our kids actually got to participate in gym time together with other homeschoolers. So you want to definitely research how you can get together. And one of the best ways to develop a group is the Facebook groups that we talked about earlier. So one parent can say, hey, I want to take initiative and teach this class, or you can rotate, and different parents can teach different things, but Facebook definitely allows for that to be easier. And so we were able to utilize a full gym and all of the equipment. So I think that is probably unique to Maryland. We didn't have to bring our own balls. We didn't have to bring our own jump ropes. They actually had a wide variety of equipment. So we had a ball, and gym days were really some of our favorite days. And it was a great time to collaborate with other parents and find out what curriculum they were using and swap things out. So I encourage you to utilize your community rec centers, because our tax dollars go to fund those. And so homeschoolers do have access to use them as well. All right, so step 4 is ask for support when needed. This is huge. I'm going to be very transparent and say that trying to do homeschooling alone, it's hard. So if you are embarking upon this for the first time, share your desire to homeschool with other parents so that you can get together with them and develop a support system. Check in. Maybe you have, set a date and time that you can check in and talk to each other. If you are people of faith and you pray, set a time where you can pray together. I have a little Bible. Oh, it's upstairs next to my nightstand. I wanted to kind of show it to you guys, but I have a homeschool Bible. And what I love about it is that it has encouraging devotions that helps me feel like I can get through this. And so even though I've been homeschooling a long time, I need that constant affirmation, that reassurance, even today, because as children grow up, and as they grow and move to different grades, they change. Their learning habits change. And the teenage years, my kids are entering preteens. Um, it's a whole different ball game. And so you constantly do need to check in with people who are a support system. In my community, there's a local teacher. So I know if I have any questions or I need extra support, that's someone I can reach out to. So you want to develop people, or develop a system and a process of how you're going to tap into your support system. There are a variety of ways where you can tap into that support system. I mentioned Facebook being online, and you can develop a local Facebook group with people who are homeschooling in your local community, your local county, state, whatever. You have to kind of create the system. There are some systems already in place, but you do need to kind of evaluate, what do I need to keep going, to feel encouraged, like I can do this. And so if you know yourself and you know that having an accountability partner is important, I encourage you to link up with other families, because so many families are starting this process together. It's going to be probably easier to connect with people who are homeschooling for the first time. But make sure, if you're homeschooling for the first time, also put some veterans in there, so that you can maybe share different, if you have questions, you can bounce different ideas off of each other. And I think that's important. That's the beauty of a school. There are many teachers in a schoolhouse, and they can collaborate and discuss things. That's what a school meeting is. And in homeschool, I encourage you to develop that same set of camaraderie. And I know when I first started, there were other parents who had started around the same time, and we spoke with each other. That is how I started with Classical Conversations. It was another mom. We met at IKEA, and she told me, hey, I got these books. I went to this presentation. This is how I did it. And this is what I like about it. And I said, oh, that sounds really cool. And that was really one of my introductions into Classical Conversations. And, we both moved on eventually, but it was great to have her as someone that I could share my experience with. So it may be one person, it may be more. But if you cannot connect with someone, like if you live in an area where there's no one else, that's kind of hard. But if you do, you can definitely tap into a community virtually. So you can use resources like Zoom. Now, Google, if you have a Google email, they have video hangouts where you can talk to each other and set up appointments in Google. So you don't even need a third-party software to connect with people. You can use FaceTime on your phone if you have an iPhone, or Google Hangouts, or, Skype. Skype is also free. So I encourage you to meet with other people. Also, if you have family, they may not be in the same area, but if you have, educators who you have in your family, connect with them, talk to them, say, I'm thinking about homeschooling. Do you have any tips? So connect with people who are already in your circuit and in your system, who are just getting started. And I mean, not who are just getting started, who already have the expertise. Talk to them about what they've done, what curriculum they have used. But when it comes to curriculum, you kind of have to do your research and find out, what is your child's learning style. That's the first way to approach a curriculum. Because if you're just doing worksheets all day and your kid is auditory, that's probably not going to be something that is going to be very helpful for them. Now, in Maryland, you need to have some worksheets because you have to approve regular instruction, but you want to do a lot of hands-on things if your kid is visual. You want to add music. And I know we only have a few minutes left, and I don't want to keep you. I want to be respectful of your time. But I wanted to talk about how long each kid should be learning. And for kindergarten, if your child is just starting school, please do not spend the whole day trying to drill in a reading lesson for that child. No, make learning fun for them and make it fluid. Take a walk. And I talk about, teaching my kids their body parts while they were in the bathtub. I talk about singing the alphabet song as I clean them. You want to make their life experience learning, but you don't necessarily want to just sit down for hours at a time. Really, that regular instruction, you want to, for a kindergartner, it's probably going to be 30 to 45 minutes a day, and you're going to break that up. So you're going to do it with songs and activities and actions and dances and all kinds of things. But you're going to want to, their attention span is only going to be about 5 to 10 minutes. So you want to break that 30 to 45 minutes up in 5, 10 minute increments. And you want to give them a snack. You want to make it fun and give them time to explore and imagine. So that is just very important right off the bat. So first grade, you're looking at an hour to an hour and a half. Again, you're going to want to break that up 15 minutes at a time. And really, they're still very young. So I would say 10 minutes. You know, you do a 10-minute lesson here and there. But again, these lessons are going to be very hands-on. So one of the things I did with my kid, we had a placemat and we put shaving cream on the placemat and they would draw their letters with their finger. We would also put, I didn't have sand, so I actually used salt. It was very cheap and inexpensive. And I had like a photo box or a shoe box, and we would put it in the top and they would draw their letters in there. So you really want to make that experience fun and interactive. And it's not going to be, you want to read to them, get books. Books that you and your kids enjoy. For my kids, my favorite author was Eric Carle. I love his illustrations, and I love that I always learned something, even though I was a parent. So he was my favorite author for my kids, and I just loved reading, and I loved acting out the stories. So, you know, get involved with your kids' education where it becomes an excitement for you. So, for second through fourth grade, you're looking at about 2 hours. And again, you want to break that time up. You want to give them breaks, bring breaks. And in the breaks, you want to, you know, maybe let them play or let them do something that they enjoy. So with my kids in the early years, they would do a break with building blocks. So we had, when they were really little, we had mega blocks. Then we had what are mega forms? They have all different types of blocks. So those are some of the things that they played with in the middle. Maybe you do some reading time, but you want to break it up. So when I'm saying that, you know, a regular instruction where maybe you're practicing handwriting and stuff like that, that fine motor skill is going to take more patience. So you don't want to spend a long time all at once doing that. But for your older kids, they will become more self-sufficient. And so there are some things that they can do on their own. And you can just let them get those things done and then have free time. You want to encourage them to explore outside and have fun and take your kids to the park. Hike with your kids. Definitely, you know, it's supposed to be an enjoyable experience. Fifth and sixth graders, you're looking at about 3 hours. Again, my kids are in that area, that age group. And so I still have to break it up. So every 30 minutes, we do take a break. So right now they're doing things 30 minutes at a time. And they are in the 6th, 7th grade. So that's what we do. And 7th through 12th grade, you're looking at 4 to 6 hours, depending. Again, you don't want kids sitting down just hours and hours at a time. You do want to take a break. But that's really the breakdown that many people have agreed works best in my experience. That has been helpful. And that's really what works best for us. So I hope this conversation has been helpful for you guys. I want to take the last minute or two to answer any questions that you may have. If you have questions, leave them in the comment section and I will answer them. But if not, I will definitely share my post on how to homeschool, how to get started. And you can, wherever you are, you can kind of adapt it and see how it applies to the state that you're in. But I hope these conversations have been helpful for you. We will not be having a conversation on Friday or Saturdays. We do have conversations Sunday through Thursday. So we will resume our conversations about homeschooling and remote learning this Sunday. And I'm just so excited to share this information with you guys because I have loved educating my children. That is why I have the Cleverlychanging podcast. And if you ever want to support the Cleverlychanging podcast, we do have a Patreon which is patreon.com, because it is a resource that I actually fund to give other parents and other families information. So tell your friends about it so that we can grow. And by helping us grow, that will help us get sponsors so that brands will see that we are offering value to our community. So I thank you all for joining me. And if there are no questions, I will sign off. All right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate you and I thank you. Please share this conversation. If you are watching the replay, leave the word replay in the comments section. All right. Bye for now. Thanks.